Myanmar is not just fighting a civil war. It is becoming a country where power is split, deals are made in the shadows, and China quietly holds the biggest leverage. Because in Myanmar today, the question is not just who rules the country. The real question is who controls the roads, the mines, the borders, and the money. And right now, China is the one actor almost every side has to deal with. For years, Myanmar has been trapped in chaos. The military junta controls some major cities and key institutions. But rebel groups and ethnic armed organizations control large parts of the countryside and border regions. That means Myanmar is no longer a country with one center of power. It is a fractured battleground. And in that fractured battleground, China has become the indispensable broker. Not because it wants to unify Myanmar, but because it wants stability where it matters most to Beijing. To understand China's role, you first have to understand Myanmar itself. Since the military takeover, the country has been in deep conflict. The junta holds on to power in name, but on the ground, its control is incomplete and constantly challenged. Rebel forces, ethnic militias, and resistance groups have expanded their influence in many parts of the country. So the map of Myanmar is now messy. Some areas are under junta control. Some are controlled by rebel groups. Some are contested. And some are governed by whoever has the guns, the supply lines, and local support. This fragmentation matters because it creates openings for outside powers. And China is the biggest one. China's interest in Myanmar is not emotional. It is strategic. Beijing wants three main things. First, it wants rare earths and other critical minerals to keep flowing. Second, it wants its pipelines, roads, and rail projects protected. Third, it wants a stable border that does not flood China with refugees, drugs, weapons, and scam operations. In other words, China does not need Myanmar to be peaceful in a national sense. It only needs the parts that affect Chinese interests to remain manageable. That is a very different goal, and it explains why China can work with multiple sides at once. One of the biggest reasons China is so involved is resources. Myanmar, especially its northern conflict zones, is rich in minerals, including rare earth elements. These are not ordinary rocks in the ground. They are critical for electronics, electric vehicles, wind turbines, and modern defense systems. That makes them extremely valuable. And because some of these mining areas sit in or near conflict zones, control over them becomes a source of money and power. For rebel groups, mining can fund their operations. For the junta, access to trade and extraction can help keep revenue eaten. For China, keeping those supply chains open is a major priority. So while the fighting continues, the minerals keep moving. That is the quiet economic engine behind a lot of the conflict. China is not just buying, building, and negotiating. It is also balancing. It maintains ties with the junta because the military still controls the central state apparatus. But it also engages rebel groups and ethnic armed actors because they control territory, roads, and border zones. That gives China leverage on all sides. It can pressure one side while talking to another. It can support a project in one area while using trade restrictions or border controls to influence behavior elsewhere. This is why analysts often describe China as the indispensable broker. No side can completely ignore Beijing. The junta needs China. The rebels need China. Local armed groups need China. And China uses that dependency to protect its own interests. The China-Myanmar border is one of the most important parts of this story. For Beijing, this border is not just a line on a map. It is a security zone. If the fighting intensifies, the spillover could include refugees crossing into China, drug trafficking, cyber scam networks, and instability in border trade. That is a problem China wants to prevent. So Beijing is not necessarily trying to end the war. It is trying to contain the war. That is a huge difference. Containment means keeping the conflict from damaging Chinese territory, Chinese investments, and Chinese influence. And that helps explain why China often acts cautiously, pragmatically, and sometimes opportunistically. There is another layer to this story. China's influence in Myanmar is not only commercial, it also shapes what the outside world can know. When one power has strong access to territory, trade routes, officials, and local actors, it also gains influence over visibility. That means controlling access to mines, border towns, and conflict zones. It means deciding which information moves and which does not. It means shaping the story before it reaches the global audience. So this is not just a fight over land and minerals. It is also a fight over knowledge. Who gets to see what is happening? Who gets to report it? Who gets heard internationally? Those questions matter just as much as the battlefield itself. For Myanmar, this creates a painful reality. The country's future is being shaped not only by internal war, but also by outside interests that benefit from fragmentation. A unified Myanmar may not be the priority for everyone involved. What matters more to some players is access, leverage, and control over key assets. That can prolong instability. Because when conflict creates profit, the incentives to end it become weaker. And when a powerful neighbor can work with all sides, the war becomes harder to resolve. That is the trap Myanmar is in right now. So the real story is not just that Myanmar is in civil war. It is that the war has opened the door for China to become the most important external power in the country. Not by solving the crisis, but by managing it. Not by unifying Myanmar, but by benefiting from its fragmentation. And that is why Myanmar is now one of the clearest examples of how war, minerals, borders, and geopolitics can all collapse into one conflict. If you want to understand modern power in Asia, Myanmar is a case study. Because sometimes the most powerful player is not the one who wins the war. It is the one who can deal with everyone while the war goes on. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Make sure to subscribe for more videos. Thanks, and stay tuned for more update.